All right, so at a diagnostic here, homeowner had pretty much just said that it's not cooling like they felt that it should be. So went ahead, turned the thermostat on, come out here, and this is what we heard. Sounds awful. All right, so it sounds awful. Originally, I touched the liquid line and the suction line, and they were pretty much the same temperature. So I initially thought, oh, it's flat. But I hooked my gauges up. It's R22. Hooked my gauges up. PSI on the low side is 118. Saturation temp is about 69. PSI on the high side was upwards of like 400, and my condenser saturation temp was like 155. So very, very high on both sides. Subcool was like 80 degrees, and superheat was about 9. So with those funky pressures, first thing I asked them was, has anyone else been out, or is this the first time it's been worked on? They let me know that, to their knowledge, this is the first time it's been worked on. So kinda odd, because my initial thought is it's overcharged, right? There's too much refrigerant in there. With nobody being out, then that doesn't really make sense. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to pull some refrigerant out and see what that does to our pressures. I don't want to, say it's a compressor or it's a TXV or piston or whatever it may be on the inside, when I could just remove and see what happens. So I'm going to use that as like a diagnostic tool pretty much, and then we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so my recovery tank is in a vacuum, and with it being so overcharged like this, all I'm gonna do is open up the valves here and just let it pull in some refrigerant. So let's zero it out. We're zero there, and let's just let it fill. All right, there's 1 pound. This whole system should only hold 4 pounds. So that 1 pound was pretty dang quick. We're at 2 pounds. So let's fire it up and see what happens. So 2 whole pounds. That would mean that the system is almost half empty, and our pressures do not look like that. So let's see. We're looking way better overall. Okay, not great, but better. See what happens here. All right. So my high side PSI, remember it was at like 400, which is absurd for R22. We're now at 140. My condenser saturation, it's about to hit 80, so we'll let it run for a little, see what happens. PSI on the low side it's about 75, still changing. My evap saturation is 44 degrees. It's not real hot out right now, and we're in the shade, so I would say it's probably somewhere in the 70s over here. But let's check our superheat and subcool. Superheat, it's pretty low. We're at about 8 and dropping, so we'll see what happens there. But let's check our subcool. Man, our subcool is at about 80 degrees. We're at 30 right now and climbing, so again, still not great, but it's definitely better. So I'm going to let this run for about 15 minutes, see what our pressures do and where we need to go from here. Alright, so I lied. My superheat was fine. Subcool was not accurate. My clamp was still on the suction line, so always good to check that. It is going down to, still dropping, but about 10 right now, so a lot better than what I thought was 30. So again, I'll wait 15 minutes and see what happens here, but glad that I caught that. Man, so that was a pretty quick diagnostic. Went inside. We're getting a 22 degree temp split, and it is cooling perfectly now. So overall, removed 2 pounds of refrigerant. My pressures are looking good. Saturation temps are looking good. Superheat and subcool is looking good. That's all it was. So it's always good to use removing refrigerant and adding refrigerant as a diagnostic tool if you have to, right? We don't want to go wasting refrigerant, pulling refrigerant out when we don't have to, but just to give you that little extra edge on being 100% certain, say if you did have a TXV or if you did have a failing compressor or something like that, just those 2 easy little things can help you determine that. So I'm glad that we didn't have to go further. It was just removing refrigerant. Yeah, we're looking good. All right, so just another note. Before we claim that it's low, it's overcharged, it's a TXV, whatever it is that we are thinking it is, you always have to check the basics, right? So the basics being, is it a clean filter? Are vents closed inside the home? Is your blower free and clear? Is your evaporator free and clear? Your condenser, is all that stuff clean? If all that stuff is working properly, that's when we can then determine, is it low, overcharged, you know, the whole 9. So after you check that, that's when you can finish up that diagnostic and figure it out. So this one is done.